Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano. This is your antidote to popular talk radio. Folks, it's time for us to take back control of our government now before this bureaucratic, oversized, and self-serving federal government starves us of our property, our freedom, our rights, and our liberty. To do this, we must shed conventional thinking regarding our political structure. We need to be revolutionaries in thought, dissidents in action. Let me repeat that. We need to be revolutionaries in thought and dissidents in action. Only after we recognize what our government is doing to our freedom and our Constitution will we start taking it back. And this program, folks, is just about that. Well, welcome, everyone. And with me in the studio this morning, I have my lovely wife and my inspiration, Erin. Erin, would you like to say good morning?
Good morning.
Thank you for being here.
Pleasure to be here, dear.
Great to have you. I may ask you to comment, maybe even take over. You know, I do not comment typically on current events. You know, this is more talking about how we should think, because the current events are really immaterial. They occur constantly, and if we just focus on that, we will not focus on where we are as a people. But I must comment on one that I just heard 3 minutes ago, and that is on the news. Of course, I'm listening to the news. I have the headphones on here at the studio at 1170 KFAQ. And the news announcer said, well, we released a drone over, I think, northern Afghanistan near the Pakistani border, and 9 suspected people were killed. 9 people were killed. 2 were suspected, insurgents or Taliban or whatever, 2. 2 were suspected. Now, folks, you have just got to scream when you hear that. You have got to scream when you say, we put a plane over a sovereign nation, right, throw some bombs down, kill a bunch of people, and then say, you know, we suspect 2 of them may have been bad guys. Now, you could imagine here in the United States, if in fact the police or whomever, the National Guard, the Army, whatever, went and killed a bunch of people in the neighborhood because we suspected a couple of them we think they were guilty. Folks, I want you to think about that. I want you to think until your mind almost bleeds. Because that is what we are being fed on a day-to-day basis, constantly. And we are so numb. We are so numb to that type of action by our government that we dismiss it. We say, oh, good, it probably was bad guys, but, we're safer now. We actually think that way. How do you think we got to think that way? From being a free people to be people in bondage. I have a T-shirt on, and it's not a Liberty Talk Radio T-shirt. It says, "Zombies are us," and the R is upside down. It's what do you got? Backwards, right? Backwards. Thank you. My wife had to correct me. Zombies are us, and that's exactly what is happening. I was in the coffee shop yesterday, and I was speaking to a foreign-born. Now, I do not want to tell you, or mention rather, I'll tell you, but I don't want to mention foreign-born where. Because the American psyche is such that if I say, oh, he was French, we go, oh, he said that because he was French. Or if I say he was from Romania, oh, those Romanians. Or if he was from Saudi Arabia, oh, he was from, we prejudice everything. And I don't want to prejudice this comment because I've heard this before. And he said, Mr. Cristiano is very interesting. He said, when I speak to people here in the United States, he's a citizen, by the way. He's an engineer. His wife is a medical doctor, an MD. And we're not talking about Mr. Stupid. Very well read, an independent now contractor as an engineer. And he said, what surprises me about America? He said, the minds of America are closed. Why are America's minds closed? And I looked at it, I said, what you just did for me is that you gave me the thrust for my program on Sunday, which I have been struggling with. I thanked him for that. He was so pleased. He was, oh, thank you. He was ecstatic, But really, the minds of Americans are closed. My son is a musician. My oldest son is a musician. A good friend of his is a musician, and he travels to Europe from time to time. His name is Jay. And I asked him when he came back, we met him somewhere. He was playing somewhere, so we went to go see him perform. And during the break, I said, Jay, how was, I think he was in the Benelux countries, Netherlands, Belgium, those places. And I said, tell me, how was it there? He said it was really interesting. He said, we would play, do our set. And then during the break, we would sit down, and he said, young kids would come up. I mean, not young kids, 13, in their teens and early 20s. And he said they would have serious conversations about what is going on in the world. And they knew what they were talking about, and they spoke logically. He said, this never happens in the United States. He says, when we play, we got the long hair and the whole bit, everything, He's like 40 years old, and he's still playing like he's a kid, But he said, but here in the States, you sit down. He said, I hate to say this. He said, the kids are absolutely mindless. They talk about silly, a program on TV or the latest lipstick or something. And he said, we can't. He says, I sit down. He said, I get uncomfortable because once you go, you're in a country where people sit down and want to have, and not an argument, but talk about serious items, social issues. And they seem to know what they're talking about. They seem to be well educated. And then you come here to America with the, supposing the best education in the world. And he said, kids are mindless. Mindless. Folks, for you that don't know me very well, I was not born on Earth. I was born on the planet Zorg. Z-O-R-G. Go look it up. Now, Zorg is an interesting planet. It's almost a duplicate of the planet Earth. There's only one major difference. On the planet Zorg, everyone thinks critically. Everyone. Not most of the people, 97. Everyone thinks critically. And everyone speaks logically. Now, how did I arrive here at Earth? Well, what happens if you are detected, it's detected that you are thinking illogically, uncritically, and speaking illogically, they put you in a space module and you're off the planet because you may contaminate someone else. It's immediate. There's no goodbye to family. In there, gone. So if my sister is listening from the planet Zorg, hi, Amy, how are you? Well, you come here. Now, see, the planet Earth, on Zorg, the planet Earth is considered the insane asylum for the planet Zorg. There's no war because it's stupid. They have games. Everyone has a rifle with little Murph bullets. It's really fun. They do this thing like every 6 months. They have this big party and everyone shoots each other. It's a lot of fun, Then we all go off a watermelon, watermelon eating contest. Great place. But here on Earth, you see, we are the insane asylum for the planet Zorg. Now, let me tell you about the Zorg philosophy. It's very simple, and I want you to memorize this. Zorgology. Free your mind, your body will follow. Now, it just seems like a trite saying. Free your mind, your body will follow. Here in the United States, we violate this further than any other country. More so than the old Soviet Union, Romania, New Zealand, you name it, we violate it the most. And we consider ourselves real smart people, educated, sort of better than everybody else. Let me tell you, folks, we are Neanderthals when it comes to thinking. In fact, I would not want to even disgrace Neanderthals by saying that. I apologize to all Neanderthals out there, of which I think I'm one. But you see, folks, this program is not about events. I'm not going to depict. If you want to learn about events, there's guys on 1170 KFAQ did a fantastic job. You want to know about the Constitution and specific, Mark Levin, great. You can't beat him. Guy's educated. He can go through fine tooth and comb letter by letter, word by word. He can let you know exactly what's going on. You want to follow events on a libertarian perspective? Listen to Jerry Doyle or Todd Schnitt. But this is not the purpose of this program. The only purpose of this program is to wake up the mind, freeing your mind so you will start thinking. So that when you listen to a Jerry Doyle on 1170, by the way, this is on 1170 KFAQ. They got the best. The very, very best are on 1170 KFAQ. When you listen to, you will fully appreciate what they are saying because you can internalize it and then you can translate it to make it real for yourself and you'll know how to act. That's the purpose of this program. I don't want to talk about the shooting in Aurora. I don't want to talk about the shooting, in Newtown. I don't want to talk about those things. Because the assumption is something's wrong in Denmark. We know it isn't right. And if it isn't right, if it happened exactly the way the government media is telling us it happened, and let's assume it did, all the government's going to do is take advantage of that situation and enslave 312 million people because of the actions of one. Now think of that logic. That is almost as logical as bombing a neighborhood in a foreign country illegally in another sovereign nation, killing a bunch of people. By the way, when they say people, they mean man, woman, and children. And at the same time, the person who authorized that particular bombing was given the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, if that doesn't blow your mind, if you just don't go absolutely nuts, if you're driving a car right now, you're probably swerving off the highway. Let's take a break. I do want you to call in 855-866-1170. Please do call in. This program is for you. If you have a question, and if you think that I'm stark raving mad, please call me. I won't hang up on you. I know there's talk show hosts that will not accept a call unless the person is in agreement with them. Oh, they'll accept a call and then degrade the person right on radio. I will never do that, folks. I will question what you say, or ask you to clarify it, and that's about it. But, listen, folks, why don't we get down to real basics here? We are all born on this ball called the planet Earth that's revolving around a big, big ball of fire called the sun, right? And we all are passing time here. And the time is a very short period of time, right? Why don't we make good use of this time? That's why when they say, oh, Harry passed away, we are passing time right now. We're all passing away. We can't do this when it's too late. That's why I'm going to be 70 years old in a couple of months. I don't have to do this. I can sit home and be watching reruns of football games, drinking beer and popcorn and potato chips. That's all I have to do. I don't want to pass away that way. I want to pass away yelling into this microphone. If I'm going to go one way, that's the way I want to go. And every one of us should think the same way. Zorgs, people on Zorg believe one thing. And this is the practical part of the planet. Each person on Zorg is the government. And what's really strange is our own Constitution says that. Our Constitution says, we are the government. We are not the governed. We govern the government. We are the voice of the government. And in effect, our Constitution says we are the government. And then what do? We abdicate all of it, and we wait for the government to make a decision. Makes no sense, folks. Makes absolutely no sense. And until we wake up, listening to the news and what happened in this here and what happened in Afghanistan, that's all nonsense. For your thinking, that's all nonsense. It's all clutter. It's keeping you distracted from thinking about what you should be thinking about. And that is, how do you maintain your freedom? How do you free your mind? You have something to say?
I just wanted to add that people need to consider not only how they can maintain their own freedom, but that of their children and their grandchildren. We are letting our freedom slip away, and we're not the ones that are going to pay for it. It's those kids coming up, and they're our kids, and we need to pay a lot more attention to the future.
Wow. A woman would think that way, and she's absolutely correct. I'm thinking very selfishly. I'm thinking of me, myself, and I, right? And yet, I'm not thinking of my sons and my grandchildren. I never thought of that. I don't think that way. Thank you, honey. That's great. It's absolutely right. Absolutely correct. Come on, let me hear from you. 855-866-1170. Of course, you can send me your emails anytime to comments@libertytalkradio.com. If you want to know where we are going, it's almost too easy to find out. And let me give you my opinion of this. Where we are going is depicted in science fiction. Look at Star Wars back in, it came out about 1970, 74 or something like that. Star Wars came out, the first edition. And what was that? That was about a few Jedi, right, fighting the Empire. Right? Who's the Empire? Who is the Empire today? Is it those people who are living in the hills of Afghanistan, which we call Al-Qaeda or the Taliban, or that we started, by the way? Are they the Empire? Are they the bad guys? See, the whole world sees the United States as the Empire. They're seeing us in better light than we see ourselves. You see, that was a metaphor saying, folks, you better be careful, because someday you're going to be forced into either belonging to the dark side, and the dark side is, guess what, is our government. Whatever our government is, the dark side, or you're going to be the select few, the very few, that are going to join the ranks of the Jedi. We watch Star Wars like that, and who do we root for, folks? Come on, yell out. Who do we root for? We root for Darth Vader. The Emperor does not agree with the optimistic assessment of your situation. I love that line. Are we rooting for Darth Vader?
Nope.
No, we're not. We're rooting for the Jedi. But when we leave that movie theater, who do we root for? Dun, 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 right? The government. We beg the government to enslave us. And we wait for legislation. That is the metaphor, folks. Now, you think that was the only movie? Let me go on to Avatar. Fabulous movie. Where the Empire lands on this planet with the sole purpose of extracting minerals, the natural resources of that planet. And of course, there are a few people who are there on that planet who are resisting. Now, who did you root for if you saw that movie? Who did you root for? Did you root for the Empire with all those equipment and guns and spaceships? Just like we're doing in Afghanistan. No different. In fact, we could have taken our warplanes over Afghanistan and made the movie Avatar. Now, for those of you who say, Joe, how could you speak so ill about our young men and women in uniform who are fighting, risking their lives for our freedom? Let me answer that, because I get that all the time. I get people, you don't, Joe, you obviously don't love your country, I love my country, damn it. Damn you, Cristiano, you don't love your. Let me tell you that. You see, the people, our young men and women who go to Afghanistan, and after they're there, they realize, they go, oh my God, what have I done? 90% of them think that way. You know that. They are not serving us. They are not protecting our freedom. They are protecting the wealth of the banks, of the Federal Reserve. They are protecting the bad guys. They're going there to make sure Darth Vader is successful. Please understand that. That's why I can't say, well, support our troops. I want to support our troops. I want them to come home. I want the wars to end. Now, I don't want to do anything to harm them. I want them to come home safely, every one of them. But more so than that, I wish they would listen to this program so they'd say, well, wait a minute. Am I going there to save our freedom, to preserve our freedom? Are we there to really get the bad guys? Or are we the dark side? And if I go there, put on a uniform, and serve the dark side, how could I possibly be serving the citizens of my country? How could I be serving a country that I love? Well, the answer is you cannot. It's not possible. Let's take a break. All right, welcome back, folks. This is Joe Cristiano. I'm your host for Liberty Talk Radio on 1170 KFAQ here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Folks, we've been talking about freeing our minds and our bodies will follow. We've been talking about what people on the planet Zorg believes. He says, I am the government. They say, I am the government, and they mean it. And they each take responsibility. They each take responsibility for what they say. Isn't it interesting that we won't say that, or we're reluctant to say that I am the government, because we do not want to take the responsibility. When something happens, we sit around and we wait for FEMA to lock us up or to give us whatever we need to survive. And of course, when FEMA doesn't react fast enough, then we complain that the government is not acting quickly enough. And what we should do is they need more funding, tax the hell out of everybody. We're great. We make sense, don't we? Do you know in what planet in the universe can you tell me where 98% of the people who are unhappy with the governments, everyone's unhappy with their government. Everyone is, right? But are controlled by 2%. In what planet in the universe is 98% of the people controlled by 2%? And that's exactly what we have. Because in Zorgology, they believe we are the government. I am the government. Understand, I am. And you have to say that to yourself. I am the government. Period. And government knows no boundaries. Doesn't stop on the Mexican border, on the Red River. It doesn't stop on the Canadian border. You are the government 100% of the time, no matter where you are, any place on this planet. That is the philosophy of Zorgology. And that's what we are missing. Folks, we were talking about science. Please do call in 855-866-1170. I really need to hear your opinions. Now, we were talking about the Matrix. We were talking, the Star Wars. We're talking about the Avatar being metaphors for exactly what is going on. If you want to know what is going to happen in the future, watch science fiction. It's all about we the people. Science fiction is about we the people fighting the dark side. My favorite movie is The Matrix. Now, let me tell you something, folks. I'm not too smart. And I'll be the first to admit it, I'm just not too smart. I watched The Matrix. I had no idea what was going on. Good action movie, had no idea what was going on. My friends were talking about it. I said, didn't understand it. I watched it again. I didn't understand it. I had to watch it 3 or 4 times until I said, oh my God, now I understand it. I really wish I could watch, I try to watch, what's that old movie, Dune, yeah. My wife read Dune, I couldn't watch it. I people figured out, oh, this is that. My mind doesn't go there. I guess I have a different mindset. And I really could never finish the movie and understand what was going on. So I have a problem. But when I finally understood The Matrix, I said, ha-ha, The Matrix is really telling us who we are today and where we are going. You have a choice. If in fact, what they're saying, folks, in The Matrix, if you decide to take the blue pill, you will live in government la-la land and pretend that everything is fine and the government is working for you, and you have to be an obedient subject from the time that you enter the school internment camps, the schools, where you're learned to be obedient memorize and be obedient, right? And take your test, graduate, get a job, and maybe two, and pay your taxes. And don't complain. That's what we are taught. We're all taught that in school. We're not taught to think critically. God, if we taught critically, we wouldn't have a school system. But when we do that, we start taking that blue pill. Very few opt out. If you watch The Matrix, how many people were on Neo?
Yeah, Neo.
Yeah, Neo and gang. How many people were on Neo's side? Very, very few. And The Matrix was enormous in size. And you had the few. Now, when you watch The Matrix, who did you root for? Think about it. Who did you root? Did you root for those machines? And those machines came around killing everyone with all the arms and all that stuff, Ugly mothers. Ugly. Scary stuff. Did we root for those? Now you say, no, Miss Cristiano, I didn't root for those. Are you kidding me? Now my answer to you is, you're lying. You are lying because that's who you're rooting for every single day. Because you're the government, allow drones to go kill people, innocent people for no reason, by a guy who has been awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. Now, when you reconcile that, if you could explain that, I'm with you. But you see, we watch the movies, right? And we root for the bad guy, and that's our outlet. That should not be our outlet. Our outlet is when we leave the movie, we should say, my goodness gracious, I have met the enemy, and it is me. That's what I had to realize, folks. Listen, I'm no different than anybody else. I just woke up someday, I don't know why. And I said, oh my God, everything's wrong. Everything is wrong. Nothing makes sense. I don't watch the news. People ask me all the time, well, you're a talk show host. What do you think about, and they rattle. I say, I don't know. I know nothing about it. And neither do I care. They say, well, how can you be a talk show host and not watch the news all the time? I said, because it's not news. It's what the government wants me to hear because they own the news media. We don't have independent news media. If you want independent news, go listen to the news media on the internet. Listen to InfoWars. Guy's kind of crazy. Alex Jones is kind of nutty, but he brings out some very, very good points. He exposes the government for what it is. And listen to this station, 1170 KFAQ. Listen to the likes of a Jerry Doyle, to a Todd Schnitt, to a Mark Levitt. Listen to those guys. You may not agree with 100% with everything, but they will make your mind start working again. You'll start realizing that you, although you root for the good guys, you are really part of the bad guys. And let's take a caller. Caller, you're on the air. Kat?
Hi.
Hi, good morning. What's on your mind?
Well, I just wanted to just make a comment that I like what you're talking about this morning. I think you're making a really good point. So we tend to agree with the government, and even though we say we don't like what they're doing, we give up our rights whenever one little thing happens, like you said earlier, and we let them take away one more right. Like I was just thinking back to whenever, and this was a good thing, when the Tylenol back in, I can't remember when that was, when it was poisoned, and from then on, everything has a safety seal. Now, that's a good example of that. But like the shoe bomber, the one guy that had the explosives in his shoe, but from then on, everybody has to remove their shoes in the airport.
Right.
Or,
good point.
When the government, it seems like in other cases when the government wants something to happen, and then like gun control, for instance, what's going on now, are they manipulating actions to occur, such as a shooting? There's that theory out there that somehow that was manipulated to happen, and then, at just the right time, that's put on the news whenever that's a hot subject.
Right.
The government wants gun control, and then all of a sudden, here's another school shooting. Did that happen and just at the right time, or was that manipulated by the government somehow?
Right. Kat, I agree. It doesn't, Kat, it's Kat. Your name is Kat, right? That's why you're on the board. K-A-T, is that correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Kat, it really doesn't, by the way, I agree with everything you've said, and thank you for your comments. But it doesn't really make any difference whether or not the government was complicit in any of these shootings. It makes no difference. Because if the government came out and said, we have too much gun control, and because of our gun control laws, we left these poor children susceptible to a madman that killed a bunch of them. We need to relax them. You see what I mean? That it makes no difference if you watch the news. It's the end result. And where we concentrate our efforts is watching all the details of the news or how many children were killed and what the parents said. And they keep on revisiting that over and over and over again. And now, so-and-so, they have the funeral service. And then we go back to that a dozen times. Well, believe me, I sympathize 100% with everything that's going on.
Right.
But that's not the point. The point is the government should be relaxing it. And because they're not, we should say whether the government was complicit or not is immaterial. They're using it. They're using it to enslave us further. That's the part. Okay?
Right. And they play on those emotions of people and say, see, now we need to take away guns.
Yeah.
But they don't put things in the news like someone who has a gun and they were able to defend themselves.
Touche.
Touche.
Absolutely.
Never.
There are 312 million Americans. One person goes crazy with a gun, all the guns got to be taken away. But you see, if we were thinkers rather than just zombies, which I want to get to in a second. We're just not, because we're zombies, we go, I guess that's what we got to do, and we go that route. All right. We have to take a break down. Kat, thank you very much for calling Liberty Talk Radio on 1170 KFAQ. Okay, folks, we're back. This is Joe Cristiano. You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio on 1170 KFAQ out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'd like you to call in. Oh, by the way, we had a female caller. I welcome female callers. Please do call. You do not have to have, there's no gender bias here. We'd love to hear females call. In fact, the gal, Kat, who called, if you're still on the line, not on the line, I'm sorry, but if you're still listening, please send me an email to comments@libertytalkradio.com, and I'd love to send you a T-shirt. Give me your a mailing address and T-shirt size, please, okay? I'd love to do that. And remember, when you send me your email, send it to comments with an S, comments@libertytalkradio.com, and it's 855-866-1170. Let me hear from at least two more people before we go off the air, which will be in around 10 minutes. So we got 10 minutes. We can take two more callers, 855-866-1170. Let me hear what you would do. Let me hear what your ideas are. We have the power. If we only have the thought process and the will to do it. I want to continue on this metaphor business. We talked about The Matrix. We talked about Avatar. We talked about Star Wars. And now, what do you see on television? I mean, constantly movies about what? Zombies. But you see, folks, and are we rooting for the zombies, the hundreds of zombies walking like that, like the zombies supposed to walk, which whatever that is? Or are we rooting for the few people, the 3 or 4 people who are holding out? Who are you rooting for? Now, I know one of you guys are going to close with, I root for the zombies, man. Zombies rock. Right, all right, enough of that. Okay? But, we're really rooting for those few people. But who are you? Who do you truly identify with? Do you really identify with the people who are holding out, risking their lives for their freedom? Or are you rooting to be bitten by one of these things called zombies so you can become one of them? You see, in the United States, 90% of the people have become one of them. But the liberty movement is now at its embryonic stage. People are starting to wake up. The government is getting scared. And in my opinion, that's why you hear about every single gunshot that goes off. You'll hear now on a day-to-day basis. If a person shoots his left toe off because he was cleaning his gun or whatever stupid thing they say, cleaning his gun. You clean your gun, it's apart, it's in pieces, it doesn't go off, but that's what they say. They'll say, oh, that's another example why we have to protect people against themselves. And once we start accepting that, or even taking our time to listen to it, we have become a zombie. We are part of the 98%, part of the 2%. That controls the 98%. We bought into that system. We have to realize that we are the power, not the government. And that's why it's incessant. They keep on pounding us and pounding us and pounding us. Because if they didn't, people would slowly, gravitate to a natural state. And the natural state is, I'm a free person. That's a natural state. It's the law of nature. And that's why governments have guns. Feinstein wants to take everyone's guns away, but she doesn't want her guns taken away. When she goes out, she wants protection with people who have automatic weapons. But you, screw you. And guess what, folks? Who do you vote for? The American people vote for the Feinsteins of this world. And by the way, I had on internet program, I really made a mistake. I had mentioned that, Israel, they're allowed to carry guns. They're not actually allowed to carry guns. You need a gun permit in Israel. The gun control is pretty strict in Israel. Except, though, which is really interesting, except in the Gaza Strip or in Gaza, right? Or the Golan Heights. If they're in if you're a Jew in occupied territory, in other words, you're illegally occupying another nation, the Israeli government will allow you to have a gun. Now, think of the logic behind that. It's like the U.S. government saying, if you're in France, you're allowed to carry a gun. The French government have nothing to say about that, but we're saying it's okay. Think of the logic just drives me absolutely crazy. And we go, well, makes sense to me, right? This is what we do. And once our thinking is that way, we're gone. It's going to be near impossible. Each person who listens to this broadcast has got to spread the message. I can't do it. I can just plant the seed. I can just give you the thought process. I can disrupt your life. I want to make you so uncomfortable you don't sleep at night, but not for long, because I want you to wake up and say, ha-ha. I received an email the other day, well-meaning. Guy said he listened to my program, he agrees, and he gave me a 10-step program of how to cure all the problems in this world, that we're facing. And every one of them had to do with controlling the individual. It was very interesting. And I called the guy, and I wrote him back. This is what I wrote back to. I couldn't get him on the phone. And I mentioned to him, I said, I'm not certain. I said, thank you for your time, but I'm not certain whether or not your solutions are going to, in the long term, going to exasperate the situation more than it is now. And every one of them had an element of government control. And I'm not certain, I'm not criticizing the guy, I'm just saying that I'm not certain if he really understood that and really was conscious of that when he was writing it. See, we do this subconsciously. My neighbor, I mentioned this before. She asked me who I was voting for. I said, well, since they didn't give me the candidate of my choice, I'm not voting. She said, and I said, it's a shame, but the political system is them against us. And she said, you just took all my hope away, broke out and cried, ran into the house. Ran into her house crying. It's like I was very nice. I wasn't nasty. I wasn't yelling or screaming like I am now. I said, isn't that amazing? Good thing her husband was in the driveway too. And he said, oh, don't worry about it. She does it all the time. I felt a little better. But it devastated me because she's a wonderful person. And yet I destroy this woman. 855-866-1170. Call Liberty Talk Radio. I'm the host, Joe Cristiano, on 1170 KFAQ, 855-866-1170. Come on, I can take one more call. There must be somebody out there with a question or a comment or someone to tell me that I'm absolutely out of my mind. And remember, in Switzerland, everyone has a gun. Everyone must have a gun. Think about that. Lowest crime rate probably in the world is in Switzerland, and everyone has a gun. Our children used to carry guns to school with them, because rifles primarily, because after school they went hunting. Now you're not allowed to have a gun even near a school. Think about that, folks. 855-866-1170. I want to hear what you have to say, what your solutions are. I want to put you on the air. I want you, as a listener, to be the radio talk show host. That's what this program should be about. Once we realize that we are the... Now, when I say we are the government, this is not some highfalutin, theoretical. Let me give you one very concrete example. And this is only one, folks. I'm not going to key on this. When the TSA took over security for the airlines, what we should have done as a nation, we should have said, fine, I'm not flying anymore. Now, I know that's impractical. God forbid something happens to mom or dad and they live in another state and you need to get there to help them. You're going to fly there. You're not going to walk, or you're not going to take the Greyhound bus. And maybe you can't drive there. You're going to do that. But do you realize that if just 5% of the people said, screw it, I'm not going to fly this year, or I'm going to fly, instead of flying 4 times a year, I'm going to fly 3 or 2 times a year. Do you know what effect that would have had on the airline industry? It would have cratered. The airline industry and lobbyists would have gone to their congressmen, the people they're paying off, right, and said, you got to get rid of this TSA or we're going to go bankrupt and you're not going to get your $250,000 for your campaign next year. And that's basically the way it works. But see, the power was with us. And what I did is I just stopped flying. Now, I did fly once last year because I had to fly. I had to go someplace. It was on the East Coast. I had to fly. But I flew once all year. We can sacrifice, folks. We could all sacrifice that. Well, I know, but I saved it for my vacation, and I always wanted to go to blah, blah land, and now is my chance, and I don't want to sit, all this stupid stuff. I mean, we sound like these stupid people on television. Instead of standing up and saying, I'm not going to fly. I will go there, but I will find an alternate way. I remember when I lived in Houston, and the traffic jams in Houston were horrendous. What solved it when the energy crisis came, there was a downturn in the economy. This is 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The traffic decreased by 3%. 3%. And all the gridlock on the highways freed up. Highways, people were going 65 miles an hour during rush hour. 3%. See, it didn't take 50% of the cars to be off the road. And it doesn't take here. Folks, this is the end of today's broadcast. We ran out of time. I'm really sorry. We have someone calling in, but we can't take your call. This is the end of today's broadcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors for their financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. Folks, you can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. All right, until next time, stay well, stay tuned.